Okay, welcome to another episode of building a ReactJs application. So in this episode, I'm going to be connecting what we created the last time. So npm start. So what we did was we did the basic structure of the table, but we are still loading it from a JSON. What we want to do is we want to fetch the data from the URL. So if you followed my previous videos, I've created a .NET Core web API. Now, the data that we usually receive from an API would be a JSON type. Now, there are three different types of JSON. The first is an object-based, so the return type is an object. The other one, the return type is an array, and then the other one, the return type is a key value pair. So if I run this, so .NET Watch run, I should be getting the localhost URL of the API that I want to be calling. So here I have moderator lang. So this one is an array because it starts with brackets. The one that is object is language. So if I add here language, I get an object, so it's curly braces. And if I want to get key value pairs, which is similar to what you get from querying an SQL database, so this is going to be lang list, and this is an array of objects. So each of this is a single object that I can go through and call its name to get the value. So this is basically the URL that we are going to make use of. Now, in my previous videos, I've also shown you guys how we are going to have a separate component, a reusable component, in which we are going to pass in a URL, and that URL is going to be parsed to the way we want. So in this case, what I did was I just stuck with the core. So what happens is the props are passed at the component mount. It waits 500 milliseconds. So this one is 500 milliseconds, and it calls the data. The data fetches the URL and adds it to the state, which is going to be shown here on the render. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to make use of the list that we created. So this is the list. Now the first thing you can see is it has a data table. So I'm going to grab this data table and I'm going to place it here in the return. So I know the return is a data table. Now this data table needs to have an import from the core UI React. So I'm going to import all of this here. There you go. So now I have this. Now I need to pass it the user data. Now because I'm on a state, I'm just going to say this dot state dot data. So there you go, my data is there. Now I need to have fields. So in order for me to pass these fields back, what I would want to do is I want to pass it as a props. So if I do this dot props dot fields, I'm going to be grabbing the fields from my props. Since my URL is also from the props, I'm just going to save this, and here what I'm going to do is I'm going to call my URL. Before calling my URL, I'm going to remove this. I'm going to replace it with my URL, and I'm going to go directly inside to up components / my URL.js. Now I have the myurl.js here, so I can call it as a tag. So here is my URL. I'm passing a URL to it, and of course my fields. So this name and the name here should match, so fields and fields. And what I'm passing for the fields is basically the fields. So there you go. And close it up. And of course the URL is going to be this URL. There we go. Now let's just save this and see how it's gonna look like. There you go. It has loaded the names. And these column names are basically the fields that we have defined. Now if I check my results, I have name, value, and key. So let me go ahead and change this to name, value, and key. Okay. Now I have name, value, and key. Just to arrange this, I'm going to move the key to the beginning. So there we go. And now I have a single component where I can pass a URL and the fields, and it's going to show this all in a table structure for me. Now you can see the table really doesn't do much. It has half pagination, but that's just about it. So I'm gonna go to the core UI documentation. So documents for data table, and I don't have an internet connection. Let me see if I can connect to an internet, just so I can show you guys the table structure. And there we go. Okay, so loading, there you go. We are looking at the documents. So this is usually a data table, and it has some data and it has some features. We're going to make use of some of these features. Let's look through them. And obviously I want to be able to do some filters, and I want to be able to sort. So there's a sorter, which is Boolean. Cool. I'm gonna go here and I'm going to say I want the sorter as well, and say true. There we go. Save it. I should be able to sort. Okay. The next I would need column filter. So this when set displays additional filter row between table and item. Okay. So I want some column filters. There we go. Save. And I have column filter. Okay. I want to have a general filter as well, so that's called the table filter. There is my table filter as well. Save, and I now have a table filter. Okay, so I have my main table filter. I have filters for every column. I have sorting. So the next thing would be for me to add a button where I can go to the next screen. This one is also cool. Show all of the details when clicking the show. I'll probably be doing this in the next episode, but that completes basically, let me remove some of these extra stuff. There we go. That basically completes our component, and we know that this component is going to retrieve a URL that we have passed with its fields and generate a table for us. So most of our admin screen is going to have tables. So for every screen that has tables and a list, that is the component that I'm going to make use of. And for every one of those, I'm going to be calling this URL. Of course, a better place would be to create a configuration file to pass these, but at the moment, this is what we're going to work with. So I don't need this, I don't need the icon, and that should complete that. Okay, so the title as well, management project. Let me just set the title as well as part of this. So this is the list URL. Before it returns the list, let me go ahead and say document.title users list page. There we go. Let's see if this yep. So users list page is our users list, and this is a table coming from our controller here, which is our REST API. Now if I make some changes to this, let's say I add an ID and just to count, for example, save it, it's going to load again, and if I refresh this, I'm still getting the same thing, but if I replace the fields that I'm passing back, such as ID, now what I'm gonna get is the ID also that I've passed. So if I again change this ID to plus equals 2, there you go. So 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, and the pagination is for 5. Let me just change the pagination for it to be at 10. So there's 10 right there. Now I have 10 items per page. Yep. So let me just add this items per page as well. I'm just going to look through the code here, and the items per page select. So this is probably it. I'm just gonna add this to it, and there we go. So it starts off with 5, 10, but it doesn't move. So let's see what's wrong here. Show details, hide, toggle details. This shows and hides details. I'm guessing the issue is because I'm running 10. Let's try this. Save it again. Let's do 10. Yeah, so it starts off with 5. So if I change it myself to 10, the 10 is not gonna make any difference here. So let me go back to 10 again, and it loads. So 10 is showing, 20 it's now showing, 5 it's now showing, 10. Okay, so I'll start off with 10. Let me see if there is a part where I can change the items per page. I'm just gonna say items per page, and it has a number. It says default is 10, but obviously it's not, so let me just go ahead and say 10 here. There we go. So this should show, no, that's weird, it doesn't show 10. Let me remove this and let's check it. It's showing 5, but it's showing 10 here. Okay, interesting. Items per page, items per page select, sorry, items per page. There we go. So I don't see it. I think this is still correct. Items per page 10, items per page select, items per page select. It's a boolean or an object. The add select over which you control item in case of using external paginations. Optional values, labels, string, replace the default labels. Okay. So how am I going to be changing that now? It starts off by 10 by itself. So when it loads, it's actually showing 5. And it's quite weird. Items per page is 10. Items per page select is also 10. Well, it's not showing me what I need to see. Items per page select. Boolean or an object. So it can't be 10. Okay, so what can this be? Items per page. It says the default is 10, but it's showing 5 for some reason. If I don't specify it. Okay. So I'm not specifying anything. It's showing 5. This is 10. And I'm gonna do this. It's showing 10 still. Which is interesting. What's the issue here? I've yet to figure out. So items per page 5 and then item select. Okay, let's just leave it for now at 5. And I'll probably be doing some research on this and some trial and errors to see why this doesn't automatically change for me, or at least I might not be aware of how to change it. Column items per page, number of items per site when pagination is enabled. Okay. On page change. There is no number of items view slot. Objects with no items. So this is a good question to ask then. Okay, so that should be it for this episode. And I will see you guys in the next episode, where I am going to start building the add user part with a form, and most likely add a couple of more functionalities, such as the actions that we want here. So I'll probably want to add an Excel upload button here, where I can upload an Excel and populate all of this, and probably a checkbox on the side to be able to do multiple deletes, button here on the side to be able to edit and go to the edit screen. So these are all some of the things that I'm going to be doing in future videos. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you all in the next video.